Should you be able to have a gun in school? Do you want a gun? This is Alan with Quarter Horse Arms. And in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about bringing a gun to school. And by bringing a gun to school, I'm talking about grown-ups, not students. Okay. So, some basic statistics, and maybe some laws. So my disclaimer is check the laws of your state. Check with an attorney if you need to. However, it does vary by state. So for example, living in North Carolina and being a teacher, I'm allowed to have a gun in my car. Now, I don't know that I would do that. I mean, why tempt a student into performing a break-in? Now, if I were so inclined, and I had a way to secure it in the car, I would consider doing that, but not if it required that I leave the magazine and ammunition with the gun. I mean, if somebody's going to break into my car and steal a gun, why would I want to give them a fully loaded and operational firearm? Unfortunately, if I brought the ammunition into school, even if it was just in a magazine, that would be a felony in North Carolina, and I like my job. So on the one hand, yes, I can do it. On the other hand, no, because I just can't see giving a minor a unsupervised handgun. All right, so let's talk about, as long as I'm on North Carolina, what happens if you, let's say have to come into a school meeting or it's parents' night or whatever, and you're wearing a gun? Going into the school with a gun would be a bad plan, and not to mention being illegal. North Carolina law, and again, this is a fuzzy law. It gives you a reasonable time to disarm yourself and secure the gun. So, let's say you were driving a pickup truck that had a lockbox in the bed. I mean, that is a legal place to secure the gun. The law doesn't define what a reasonable time period is. So if you have a law enforcement officer that's having a bad day, the reasonable time could be unreasonable from your perspective, and you could wind up getting arrested. Luckily, in the district I work in, there are very reasonable school resource officers. But I also want you to consider in this day and age, too many people have been bringing guns to too many schools and then using them, and people are getting killed. As a teacher, which means I'd be treated like any other adult, if I go onto school property and I am carrying a weapon, I'm breaking the law. And, on a funny note, one of the guys I taught with one day came into school, and I could see his guns, yes, plural, guns, sticking out of his waist and holster. And, I said, dude, did you forget something? And I kind of point down to his waist, and he goes, oh my God, and then ran back to his car to get rid of him and lock him up before anyone saw. Simple, honest mistake. But North Carolina law, bringing a gun onto any educational property, and that includes things like stadiums and ball fields and stuff like that. Anything that gets defined as an educational location, you cannot have a gun. Okay, so having said all that, what about your state? Well, damned if I know. I know it's a flip answer, but and this data might be a year or two old. I don't know if things have changed because, frankly, I tend to stay focused on North Carolina, which is where I live, and as a concealed carry handgun instructor, that's the part I actually have to teach. So at any rate, what is the data? Well, about 24 states. So we're talking nearly half the country has laws that allow you in some way, shape, or form to bring a gun onto school property. Which, seems like an incredibly high number. In fact, I was shocked when I found it. And there's something like half a dozen states maybe that require teachers to be armed. And I could be misremembering that information. And this goes beyond, having armed sentries in the school. Now, on the one hand, do I think a gun would be a better deterrent against a shooter than a bucket of rocks that one state provided to each classroom? Yeah. On the other hand, do I think we need to have unrestricted guns in a school? No, I do not. And, what's surprisingly enough, at least out here, is a lot of the police departments don't want armed teachers. It's just one extra thing to have to deal with. Meaning if there's an incident at the school and they're looking for a shooter, well, Alan comes walking out of the building with a gun on his hip because I'm one of the armed teachers, which North Carolina does not allow. Do I want to get shot because I'm now in a high-stress situation with law enforcement who are worried about a gunman shooting children? And the answer is no. I enjoy my life. Well, for the most part. So I guess there's one thing to consider. The other is a lot of the law enforcement agencies. So presumably, if I'm going to be armed at school, I'd like to think that some law enforcement agency would become responsible for the training. Well, the police departments, besides having extra armed people to deal with, and potentially, students grabbing a gun. And so, the other part of it comes down to the liability for arming the teachers. What happens if there's a gunman and, I don't know how to handle a gun real well. Well, that's not the case, but let's say that's the case and, I just go out there and start spraying bullets. I hit the gunman, but, I hit some students too. I can't imagine the students that got shot. I can't imagine that their parents would be happy about that. They might be happy, if the kid, survived. I don't know that I'd want to be involved in shooting a perfectly good student, but, that's neither here nor there. So, again, my advice is check your local laws. Because of school shootings, you may actually have seen some law changes about who's allowed to have guns on campuses. Check with an attorney. And as always, if you have any comments or questions or episodes you want to hear me talk about, or even have a live session, you can call or text to 919-808-6480. You can send an email to info@quarterhorsearms.com. The website is quarterhorsearms.com. And as always, this is Alan with Quarter Horse Arms in Snow Camp, North Carolina. Have a great day. Keep your guns out of schools. And I'll talk to you in the next episode.